Hello everyone, welcome to the daily news protocol of the Hindu newspaper analysis contributed by Vishnu IAS Academy. Today we are going to see the news articles for the date 12th April 2022. Listed are the news articles for today. There are very much interesting topics for today. If you can see the first article, the MSME, the factors and scenarios and the problems that are being faced by the MSME. Now in this scenario, first let's see the definition of MSME. What are called as MSMEs? If you can see the MSMEs Act 2006, there is an earlier definition that the MSMEs are defined and divided into two groups, manufacturing enterprises and the service enterprises, and they are divided into three sectors: micro, small and medium. If we can consider the investments here, the sole and base criteria taken here is the investments. So for manufacturing enterprises under the Act 2006, the investment limit is below the 25 lakhs for micro entities and below the 5 crores for small and below the 10 crores for medium. And as well for service enterprises, it is less than 10 lakhs for micro and less than 2 crores for small and less than 5 crores for medium enterprises. It was the earlier definition, but this definition was revised again in the year 2020. Here what happened is the criteria for both the groups of the MSMEs, that is manufacturing enterprises and the services enterprises, was combined, and the definition and the criteria taken here are two. In the area of investment and also the turnovers were also be considered. So if we can see the limit for micro MSMEs, the investment should be less than 1 crore rupees and the turnover will be the 5 times higher than the investment. So here the turnover will be less than 5 crores. And for small enterprises, the investment is the less than 10 crores and the turnover will be less than 50 crores. As well for the medium, it is investment is less than 20 crores and the turnover is less than 100 crores. If you can see the numbers here, you can easily remember in the 1:10:20 ratio for the investments. And for the turnovers, it is 5 times higher, 5, 50 and 100. You may get questions like these in statistics and numbers like this also sometimes in your exam. So if you can see the today's scenario, why the MSMEs, there is very much wonderful lead article in today's newspaper. It has discussed all the challenges and all the criteria and all the problems and the way forward, the better way forward. Everything of MSME was very decently discussed in this article. So MSMEs can be considered as financial safety nets. If we can protect MSMEs very well, they can act as a financial nets for our economy. And to our bad luck, MSMEs would be the worst hit in any economic crisis. Recently we have seen the pandemic crisis and followed by the economic crisis. So all these factors hit the MSME at the worst phase. So if we can see the significant contributors, the sector is a significant contributor in terms of industrial output. It can give the best industrial output. Because in India the number of MSMEs is very huge. So that's why it will give best output and it can share a best contribution to the GDP, and it plays a very crucial role to the exports, and it also guarantees the very good employment generation. That is the much importance of MSMEs right now in India. So let us see the challenges of MSMEs. What are the challenges? Recently we have seen the crisis. It is not the first crisis of our country. We have seen so many crises earlier. So under the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, MSMEs hit the worst, and the investments and the products lost the demand. The products coming out of the MSMEs lost the demand, and also the investment crunch was there. Economic trade restrictions because of the lockdowns and the restrictions on the economic flow, that also hit the MSMEs continuous flow of marketing and business, and also supply demand disruptions. As there is the population flow was reduced because of lockdowns and economic restrictions and all during the pandemic crisis, the flow of the goods, the supply and demand of the goods was disrupted a lot. Because of that also, MSMEs had faced the slowdown, and the restrictions were also shown negative effect on the MSMEs. The increased cost of production was also very high, became very high. Why? Because the business was became very low. So further, the MSMEs, the medium enterprises, can't invest further. That's why the cost of production, as the cost of production has increased, they couldn't invest further and further, and they couldn't promote their business further and further. In that scenario, if you can see the impact, the factors of all these impact on the MSMEs, it has declined the turnover. Recently, there was a study of 255 small firms of NCR and Uttarakhand. That report, that study has told that recently over the 90% of firms have declined. That is very huge number, right? If we can consider entire number of MSMEs, almost 90% of firms have declined their business. And also half of the MSMEs, half of the small businesses have noticed the 50% decline in their turnover. That is very much concerning here. Why? Because there are huge population were involved in that sector. So we should give some inputs, incentives from the government to stabilize their economy. Okay, and also so many firms had collapsed because of the demand crunch and the shortage of raw material and the shortage of labor. That was also biggest factor for the slowdown of these MSMEs, and also low recovery of market, payment delays, all were the extended criteria, extended scenarios happened because of these economic crisis and the pandemic. Right. So, how these MSMEs can work further? The turnovers were raised for few MSMEs. We have seen that majority of the MSMEs has seen slowdown, but in some sectors, few firms have also seen the raised turnovers. Why? Because we are in the health crisis. So that's why the health sector has seen the rise, and the pharmaceutical sector and the medicinal products, food and beverages sector, all these factors, all these areas has seen the rise in their turnover. And also for rise of these sectors, the owners of these firms have followed the quick shift of their ideal, of their objective. As earlier, they are not into this sector, this area, like manufacturing masks and manufacturing sanitizers and going to the food delivery sector. Like that, the few owners of few firms have shifted quickly, and that's why they could see the rise in their turnover. It can be a best strategy to be followed in future. So, in this scenario, what could be the best way forward for any crisis like that? If we have to see any future crisis like that, what could be the suggestions for those MSMEs? Emergency funds. Any emergency fund for MSME, if have to be made mandatory, they can fill that gap in the investment crunch and demand crunch and the earlier as we have discussed the cost of production and all, those can be fulfilled with any fund like this emergency funds, and an uncertainty corpus fund for small businesses. Specifically, if we can maintain any fund like this uncertainty corpus fund, the small businesses can get some loans or some sanctions for this fund in the times of crisis. And also savings from turnover, if they can made mandatory, right, every firm, every industry will get a turnover, right, and a small amount of that turnover is saved mandatorily in a fund separately, that will save our future crisis, right. So that is the whole purpose of this way forward and suggestion. And also small business insurance scheme, like we have some insurance schemes like Pradhana Mantri Fasal Bhima Yojana in agri area, farm sector. Like that also for small businesses also, if we can maintain any insurance scheme, that will also save the lives of these business owners. Okay, moving forward, let's see the next news article. There is a discussion regarding the appointment of the judges in India. Recently what happened is, there was a conversation happened between the Chief Justice of India and USA. While going on that conversation, the counterpart of the USA has questioned as Chief Justice of India that judges in India appoint judges. Judges appoint judges in India. He gave that statement. But our Indian Chief Justice condemned with that statement, saying that it is not the judges who appoint the judges, but it is the government in the name of the President of India. Clear? As it is in the news article, you may get questions in that topic, that is judiciary. So let's see some background information of that. As per the constitutional provisions, judges in India would be appointed by the President. As we have seen earlier, they will be they will be appointed by the executive in the name of the President. And also there is a word that mentions the consultation. Of course, President while appointing those judges will consult the Chief Justices and other such judges, any senior most judges of the Supreme Court and High Court. Okay, so if we consider the word consultation, it was quite contradictory and controversial word. Why? Because the definition of that context is not clearly defined anywhere. So that's why a series of court cases were happened. If you can see that the first judge's case 1982, it has declared that consultation does not mean concurrence. The case was because to define the meaning of the consultation. Why? Because here the President is appointing the judges, right, with the consultation of Chief Justice of India. It may hamper the appointment of the judges, right, if the President goes to the head of the judiciary itself, right. If in that context there may happen some controversies. Okay, that's why a few judges forming into a group has filed that case, and in that case the verdict was consultation does not mean concurrence. That means what? The executive was in primacy. That means the suggestion and advice given by the CJI could not be binding on the President. That was the meaning of that. So, President can solely appoint the judges. But later on, another case was filed, that is second judge's case in 1993. Here what the courts have said that the advice by CJI is binding on the President. It is important. The advice that was given by the CJI will be binding on the President. But here the advice will not be given solely by the CJI, but he will consult another such two senior most judges. Here he will consult two senior most judges and together they will give advice to the president and that advice would be binding on the president. That was the verdict under this case. And after that it again went controversial and another case was filed as third judge's case 1998. Here again the consultation, the word consultation was in the discussions. The consultation of plurality judges should be considered by CJI. Okay, here what happened is the CJI can consult four other senior most judges to give an advice to the president. Here if any two judges give some contradicting or different opinion, at least two judges, that decision will become void. So that is the criteria happened till here. It was the part of the collegium system, right? We know the collegium system. So that's how the collegium system was evolved. But after that there was another case in 2015. Supreme Court told that the consultation of with the CJI will be the sole priority. But under the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act, there was a body formed, NJAC, National Judicial Appointment Committee, in 2014. Under this, a new article 124A was inserted in the Constitution. Here what happens is a body under the NJAC having some members, judges and some merit and some exponential persons, all those members will be the working group of the NJAC and they will decide the appointment of the judges under this Constitutional Amendment Act. But what happened here is the Supreme Court again told that it may hamper the individuality of the judiciary. The working of the NJAC may hamper the individuality of the judiciary, that's why it can't be in presence. So that's why the NJAC was repealed and again in the fourth judge's case in 2015, the collegium system has again became operative again. Clear? This is the sequence happened with the appointment of the judiciary. Till now, if you can see this all this discussion, you may get doubt that judges appoints the judges in India. But as we know, the deep subject of all these cases under our constitution, we can't agree to that, but the appointment of the judges will be happened by the government in the name of the President of India. Clear? Moving forward, the NITI Aayog has recently released an index called State Energy and Climate Index. It is nothing but giving some ranking depending on their environmental clearance performances, climate change mitigation performances. So under this index, NITI Aayog has divided the states into two groups as large and small states. Depending on this, on their geographical and area and the size, though the states were divided into two groups. Under the category of large area, the top states are Gujarat, Kerala and Punjab. Okay, under the small area, small states category, Goa topped the list. And sometimes we may get questions that which states were in the below of the list. So that's why we should learn figures like this also. Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh were the bottom three states of this list. Okay, and also it is the round one of that index, the State Energy and Climate Index. Here the NITI Aayog has studied 6 parameters. Coming to the index and reports, sometimes we get questions in the area of criteria. Earlier we have got a question in the Human Development Index. The criteria of that index was asked earlier in the UPSC preliminary exam. So that's why let's learn the criteria. The performance of the discounts was considered here. I have highlighted the keywords here for your convenience to learn. The access and affordability and reliability of energy. and the clean energy initiatives and energy efficiency mechanisms and techniques and environmental sustainability. If any new initiatives were followed, those will also be considered into the index. Like that, all these 6 criteria were considered to give this ranking. Okay, the index is based on the 2019-20 data. Okay, moving forward, let's see the next news article. The Transpersons passport rule. It was recently in news. This issue is in the news and in the discussions from so many years, whether to give some gender status to the transgenders or not. Recently, we are seeing some progress in that. In so many exams and Aadhaar and identification forms, there is putting, the authorities are putting a 3rd category for transgenders. But in recent news, in Delhi High Court has studied this case. A transgender person has applied for a passport and he was rejected the passport. Why? Because he didn't have that certificate of gender reassignment surgery. He has given Aadhaar and other identification cards, but passport was rejected to him. So he went to the Delhi High Court. Hence, Delhi High Court has suggested that to condemn the passport rules to any trans persons. Why? Because there is no such a rule that every transgender should undergo such a surgery. So that's why every transgender may not have any certificate like that. So such a certificate couldn't be put as a mandatory condition. So that's why the passport rules requiring a transgender person to produce a certificate of reassignment surgery shouldn't be considered a mandatory. It can be a violative of fundamental rights and personal liberty, right to personal liberty, right to life. All these will be considered. Hence, the Delhi High Court has condemned those passport rules. Moving forward, let us see some prelims facts of the day. Okay, the Barbara forest. It is in the Odisha. It is one of the Asia's largest teak and sal forest. It is important. It is Asia's, not world's, Asia's largest teak and sal forest. It is famous for, of course, timber. Okay, so it is named after the wife of one of the British officer who is killed by a tiger. So with that point, we can remember this name easily. And also, probably it is one of the forests which is protected by the CRPF police forces. Those are the facts to be remembered. If you can see, next fact, microplastics. Recently we have seen that microplastics are entering into the human blood. And again we have seen the microplastic in the news that they are changing the skeletal structures of the fish. Skeletal deformities are happening maybe because of the microplastic pollution. An IISc study has told that. In this scenario, if you can see the definition of microplastics, what are the microplastics? These are nothing but the small microplastics which have size below the 5 mm. We can see the plastic microplastics till nanometer sizes also, 0.001. Okay, so that is the criteria here. And if you can see any Indian government initiatives, there is a elimination of single-use plastic 2019. Under these, the microplastics are also listed out to eliminate them till 2022. These are all the news articles for today to discuss. Revise and study well. Let us meet on in another interesting section tomorrow. Thank you.